Crazy.
Never forget, this bill in 2001 referred to chemtrails as an exotic weapon. Again, this is HR, stands for House of Representatives, HR 2977, okay? And this is about a bill to stop and restrict weapons in space. Scroll down, you will soon see exotic weapon systems such as electronic, psychotronic, and information weapons. 2. Chemtrails. 3. High altitude, ultra low frequency weapons, which is actually basically 5G like weapons, EMF weapons, more like 3G, 2G. Boom, laser weapons.
Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning. Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong.
Boom, laser weapons, strategic, theater, tactical, or extraterrestrial weapons, and chemical, biological, and environment and climate or tectonic weapons, which they have all of. This means they can make earthquakes, they can make hurricanes. This bill never passed. This was a House of Representatives trying to get the word out about this stuff. It's right here, plain to see. Look up these terms, look up these keywords, look up this bill, HR 2977. This is real, people.
I lived about less than a mile behind the flight line at Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City. And due to my background as an industrial hygienist and an environmental specialist, I conducted soil grid sampling and grade sampling. Those of you who may not be too privy to chemistry, you know that there's natural elements occurring in Earth. Aluminum is one of them. However, barium, radioactive, and strontium are not. So I conducted those samples and saw limits in my community that would make your head spin. And I started to realize that those peers within my professional community that were trying to wake those of us in the military up were right. While at Warner Robins Air Force Base, I thought I was defending my country on a home front, making sure that all those people that went out there, front line, were safe and protected from carcinogens, radiation, inhalation, drinking water, noise, all of it. My job was to protect them so they could be all they can be. In 2009, late 2009, I stumbled upon something that changed my life.
The real reason why we see this ripple effect happening in the sky is going to blow your mind. Now, this is what resonant frequencies look like when they are pitched into water. So different frequencies are being pitched into this water, and it creates different shapes and different patterns. Now, let's take a look at what this frequency does to sand, 4129. See this pattern? Looks very similar to this pattern now, doesn't it? This pattern happens because they are beaming ELF frequencies into the sky. And this is exactly what they are using to do this. It is called HAARP, and it's run by the military. Now, you can literally go outside and observe this yourself. They drop chemicals from planes, then they use HAARP to disperse those chemicals and block out the sun. All you gotta do is look into this stuff. They literally admit they're spraying millions of tons of chemicals into the atmosphere to block out the sun. And you can go look up the hundreds of patents the US has on weather control and doing exactly what I'm telling you. This is what a normal sky looks like, guys. And this is what weather modification looks like. This is why you don't see skies like this in Mexico, because they banned weather modification. They put this right in your face of all of your favorite TV shows. Now, the reason I make these videos is because the collective consciousness is shifting. We could be one person waking up a way that will shift the collective consciousness and in turn take down our suppressors. They have been deceiving you your whole lives, and the real truth to everything is found within. Peace and love.
In the 20th century, clouds were seeded by numerous countries around the globe with various chemicals to produce rain. China was just doing this over the summer in Beijing to make sure that there weren't any rain, that there wasn't any rain during the Olympics. But all this has changed dramatically with the U.S. military's secretive research and plans to control the planet's natural weather. This has not been given very much press, and we have to remember that we have a corporate-owned press where 85% of radio, television, and print media is owned by 5 corporations. So they're not going to talk about things that are of really serious consequence, and that's somewhat of the blessing, a mixed blessing of the Internet, but there's certainly plenty of information on weather modification. The Air Force is on record as saying, quote, they want to control the weather by 2025, and we are not talking about just seeding the clouds for rain. Weather modification means, quote, any activity performed with the intention of producing artificial changes in the composition, behavior, or dynamics of the atmosphere, unquote. And as of April this year, there are more than 150 different weather modification programs around the world. Since about 2000, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy have been spraying the entire United States sky with a toxic brew of chemicals and other biologic agents. Just want to show you something. We have 2 different kinds of trails in the sky right now. One are called contrails. How many of you know what contrails are? Contrails are what have been around from the ends of planes since World War II. These are very, very short exhaust trails that usually evaporate within a few minutes. You just look up at the sky and you'll just see a jet, sometimes with 4 trails, but it evaporates pretty quickly. How many of you know what chemtrails are? Nobody. The military and some commercial planes are spraying us with what are called chemtrails. I want you to look at the, and oftentimes before there's a weather front, there are heavy assaults from these planes just before a weather front is changed and comes in. Military and some commercial jets have been fitted with huge barrels of at least 49 different kinds of documented chemical poisons. Among other documented ingredients in this toxic man-made clouds are pathogenic molds, fungi, weaponized viruses, and made in some places like the secret site at Fort Detrick, Maryland, which is supposed to be a cancer site, but there are a number of scholars and professors tracking this that have big questions about this. Barium and nanoaluminum particles. What do these do to the human body? Barium is an alkaline earth mineral. It was discovered in 1774. At low doses, it can act as a muscle stimulant. At high doses, it detrimentally affects the heart and the nervous system. Barium is toxic to all mammals, and that means not just humans. Aluminum, which is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, is known to diminish kidney function and destroy brain cells and cognitive function. Just think about it. Just between the aluminum and the mercury that we're breathing all the time, we've got already a serious issue about brain function and cognitive function. There is also documented evidence that the aluminum in chemtrails is released as nanoparticles, and that when they reach the Earth environment for wildlife, in lakes and streams, it's causing serious problems with wildlife there. Researchers are also finding that nanoparticles interfere with the growth of plants. Nanotechnology is totally unregulated. Just this past month, a new research report came out showing and documenting for the first time that these nanoparticles actually go through the skin. Well, if you breathe them, whether they go through the skin or whether you're inhaling them, it's still a problem, a serious problem.
Many people to this very day believe and state that weather modification didn't start into the late 1900s, such as Project or Operation Popeye during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972, where the US government and its CIA used chemicals that would be shot out by aircraft to intentionally induce rain to slow down the soldiers from Vietnam and an attempt to extend the monsoon season. Many go on to say weather modification didn't start till after World War II. James Pollard, SB, a U.S. meteorologist born in Westmoreland County from May 9, 1785 and died later around January 24, 1860, proposed the idea that burning forests may have the capacity to increase rain. The science behind his bold theory goes like so. Storms could be proposed by large fires making local disturbances and the equilibrium of temperature, which would ascend currents of cloud and rain. Although James Pollard's theory on weather control made him famous for his nickname Storm King and the invention of the first ever national weather forecasting, his theory was never put into experimentation. His suggestions to Congress on experimentation of his bold theory led him to rejections due to the absurdity of the idea of purposely creating wildfires to supposedly induce rain. Some of his critics go on to say, did not fear SB's plan would fail, but that it would succeed, placing the power of rainfall into the hands of the federal government. The earliest attempts involved the concussion method, which was premised on the theory that gunpowder, explosions, triggered friction and generated nuclei to produce rain. Congress later appropriated funds to put this theory into practice. The task was given to Robert St. George Dyrenforth. His experimentations continued from 1891 in Sea Ranch, Andrews County to 1892 in San Antonio. These experimentations were first suggested by Edward Powers. In his book War and the Weather, Edward noted the effects cannons and loud noises had on the weather during war. One of the experiments involved balloons containing oxygen and hydrogen that would explode at a height of a mile or more. This was then followed by the firing of charges of dynamite attached to kites and of blasting powder scattered over a wide area on the ground. Torrential rain would immediately occur. Many more experiments were conducted during different weather conditions as well as elsewhere around the 1890s by several other men. Dyrenforth, on the other hand, never had any success in rainmaking, even though he had done exactly what he had read from War and the Weather. He later became known as Dry-Hens-Forth due to the fact that he never made it rain in Texas.
You told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to
So yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created.
Hello, everybody.